Good morning, students. Now we are going to discuss on Unix system structure. So, this Unix system structure, which consists of some various components and various subsystems and various parts of structures that which helpful to us to understand exactly how the Unix system structure it used to work. So, along with the Unix system structure, we are going to discuss on the kernel and shell. So difference between the kernel and shell will be discussed here. And then along with this, we are going to concentrate on the basics of Unix operating system. And then along with this, we are going to discuss on the utilities and applications that we have in Unix system structure. The Unix operating system, which is going to be one of the important and predominant operating system which help us to manage some various things that we have related to operating system and files and processes, and also to manage network related actions. We are going to use this Unix as an base one. So whatever the network related operations or process or handling procedures or network management and protocols, so all these things will be handled and managed using this Unix operating systems. So in global environment or any concern that which handles networks or which handles some numerous data, so all those things which using this Unix as a base one to manage the complex datas and databases and data structures that we have. So we are going to discuss on the Unix system structure. So this is going to be the overall structure of Unix operating system. So at the top you will have the users, and then the next to the users you will have the shells, commands, interpreters and various system libraries. And then at the middle you will have the kernel which has various subsystems like IO subsystems, input output subsystems, and then file subsystems, and then memory management subsystems. So these are the various subsystems that we have in the middle of your Unix system structure. At the bottom you will have some various hardware components and their functionalities. So the kernel which used to place in between the system calls and libraries, and in hardware. So you'll have software at one end and hardware at other end, and in between this software and hardware you will have some various subsystems like input output subsystems, file subsystems, and then the memory management subsystems. So here, using system calls and libraries, we are going to make use of these subsystems, and we are going to interact with whatever the hardware that we have at the other end of your operating system. So suppose you have to access any printer that you have connected with your computer, printer which is going to be like an hardware, and then to access this printer we need some driver software. So we used to have some software at the other end, and then to access those software and making use of the software and using the software accessing the printer, all these things would be able to happen using the software interpreters system libraries that we have at the topmost end of your Unix system structure. So along with this system calls and libraries, we used to have a box named as a shell. So within this box we used to post some commands, and using those commands we would be able to control, or we would be able to perform any actions that we want to perform. Then whatever the input that you're going to give to this system structure, it used to take that input and it used to process. So with the help of file systems and then memory management subsystems it used to process all those things, and then finally using the input output subsystem, it used to produce the output of whatever the actions or process that it have handled. So the Unix system structure is very very important structure to understand that we used to have software at one end and hardware at the other end, and to make them to interact we are going to use some various subsystems, and these subsystems which used to process whatever the thing that you're going to handle in this Unix operating system. So in this input output systems we used to have some various terminal drivers, and then character based IO systems, and then in file systems we used to have the mechanism named as swapping, either in blocks input output or either in forms of strings input output or character input output. So you'll have some disk and tape drivers over there in file systems, and then in memory management system you will have scheduling, page replacement policies, and demand paging mechanisms, and the applications of virtual memory as how you're going to manage the memory spaces efficiently. These three subsystems must be an very very important and crucial one that we have to concentrate on. The file systems which consist of some various subsystems like process management subsystems, and then you will have files at one end and memory management subsystem at the other end, how these two things is going to interact and how we are going to process these things is seems to be an very very important thing over here. The next we are going to concentrate on the Unix operating system and introduction. So here the Unix operating system which consists of some various layers like kernel layer, shell layer, and then utilities and application layer. So as we discussed, kernel layer which consists of some various subsystems like a process management subsystem, our input output management subsystem, our file subsystems, our memory management subsystems, and then shell layer which consists of some system calls and libraries, and also the interpreter and shells and its commands. And then finally we have utilities and applications, so whatever the programs or services that we're going to execute, all those things will be present in these utilities and application layers. And this particular operating system which is going to be an multi-user and multitasking operating system, and then you have some various versions of this operating system, and then whatever may be the versions, it used to use the same Unix system structure. And then these operating systems were used in by programmers, developers, business environments, and then various educational institutions to perform some various tasks simultaneously using this multitasking operating system. And this one which is going to be an introduction part or basics of Unix OS, where this operating system was designed by programmers of AT&T at Bell Labs by 1969, and which is going to be a multi-user and multitasking operating system. So it would process or it would manage a multiple task or multiple process at the same time. So at the execution end we used to run some multiple process or task or modules at the same time. So we used to call this operating system as a multitasking or multi-user operating system. So it here we are concentrating on two objectives as multi-user. So at the same time, multiple users would be able to access this Unix environment and process their programs, and also it would handle some multiple tasks posted by or multiple tasks assigned by these multi users. So this is going to be the basics or introduction part of your Unix operating system. The next one which is going to be about the differences between kernel and shell. So you must know these differences because The shell which is going to be a separate one, where kernel which is going to be a separate one, and how these two things which used to process and which used to manage the things in your operating system. So the kernel which is going to be acts like the heart of the Unix operating system, and shell which is going to be the program which sits between the user and the kernel. So you'll have the user at one end and the kernel at the other end, and in between this user and kernel, this shell which consists of some system called libraries and interpreters and commands which used to make the users to interact with the kernel. And the purpose of interaction is to execute something, a program or file, whatever that have to execute by the user. So this is going to be the first differences that we have. And then the kernel which is going to be an software application which provides interface between the hardware and the user. And then here the shell which is going to act like an interpreter which is to translate the commands that are typed into the terminal session. So we'll have a terminal and then we're going to type some commands over that. The shell which is going to interpret all those commands. And then the next difference is kernel which is to handle some various process, memory, or files, or device, or network management. So all these things will be managed by your kernel. Whereas in cell, users they used to type some commands, and using those commands it used to process, the interpreter it used to process, and then it used to produce some outputs. So the commands will be handled by this shell. Then the final difference is the kernel which is responsible for ensuring the all the systems and user tasks are performed concurrently, like an multitasking or multi-user operating system. And then here the shell which consists of some series of commands and processing those commands using some shell script environment. And so this is going to be the differences between the kernel and shell. And the next one is about utilities and applications. So this is going to be the final layer that we have in Unix system structure, so which includes some commands, word processes, graphic programs, and database management programs. And these programs were accessed by typing the commands to start the program using some command line environments. So this could be accessed and through some various environments, either it's going to be CUI based or GUI based. So we would be able to access those terminal using some protocols like telnet, and you would be able to process those commands. So normally to access the remote environment or remote desktop or remote server, Unix server system, we used to use the telnet as an important protocol, and using this protocol we would be able to access the Unix system. And using your shell we used to type some commands, and those commands will get processed, and your Unix system it used to produce an output that will be displayed in your terminals. So with this I would like to stop this presentation. So students, you must concentrate on this particular topic, and then get more knowledge about these Unix subsystems and Unix environments and kernel and its various processes. So thank you students, thank you for listening.